I'm delighted to be joined now by the Tory leadership candidate and MP for Newark. It's Robert Jenrick. Robert, thank you very much. Welcome to the show.
Good evening. Very nice to be back, Patrick.
I'm going to start with reparations. So, do you think that Britain should pay a penny to countries like Barbados? This has reared its head today, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Look, I don't think our country has a uniquely bad past. I'm proud of our history and our heritage. We abolished slavery 200 years ago, and we paid a high price for that, as did British sailors who fought on the high seas to protect people and end slavery when other countries continued to perpetuate it. So we should be proud of our history, and we should be looking forward to the future now, working with allies and partner countries around the world, but not paying reparations.
Do you think that David Lammy's position is actually tenable at the moment?
Well, I think David Lammy seems to always put other countries' interests first. You know, he's just handed back British territory to Mauritius, an ally of China, compromising a critically important military base. That's a terrible act of self-harm. You know, he is making mistake after mistake.
They do say, just to push back on that, they do say that that was started by the Tories.
Well, I wish we hadn't even entered into those negotiations. You're absolutely right. That was a mistake then. But I hope that no Conservative government would ever have concluded these negotiations in the way that Lammy and Starmer have just done. Just on something else now. Again, you know, it's getting a bit of criticism started by the Tories. These processing centres for illegal migrants. So today we get the news that Keir Starmer appears to sign us up for about another 8 years, 520 million quid cost to the taxpayer. Look, Nigel Farage has come out and said, oh, you actually personally set the ball rolling on this. Labour have just seen it through. Would you have kept these processing centres open for another 8 years, do you think? No, absolutely not, because we had a plan to stop the boats. That's the point. What Starmer has done by signing up to this arrangement up to 2036 is to concede that for all his rhetoric and posturing of smashing the gangs, he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't think or even believe that he's going to succeed. He's saying he's going to consign people in this country to years more of illegal migration. I had a very clear plan. There was the one that I ultimately resigned from Cabinet over, which is that if you come here illegally, yes, you'd be detained, but you'd be removed within days from our country, either back home to where you came from or to a safe third country like Rwanda. That is what we need to get back to. Strengthening, not scrapping the Rwanda plan. If I'm lucky enough to lead the party, you know my view, we will do that, and the only way to make that work in practice is to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Well, in the time that it would take you, conceivably, to leave the ECHR, would you just ignore it in the meantime, do you think? Well, I would not agree to, for example, the Rule 39 injunctions, these late-night pyjama injunctions by unnamed judges. I made that case very clear in Parliament that we must not be accepting that. But I want us to get out of the court as soon as possible. Let's not mess around. That's why I don't think we should spend decades trying to reform the court, as some people do, including some of my opponents in this leadership race. We need to just be honest with the public. We'll never secure our borders whilst we remain within the European Court of Human Rights. So let's end this now and add it to the stable of Conservative policies, win a mandate for change at the next general election, and then get on and do it. And for you, this Tory leadership election now, is it as simple as it's a vote to either leave the ECHR or not, do you think? It is. Let's use this moment as a decision point. It's leave or remain. I'm for leave. If the members of the party vote for me, it will be our party's policy from the 2nd of November onwards that we're leaving the European Court of Human Rights. Get on board with that, aren't they? Well, that's the point of this long leadership election, isn't it? To settle some big policy debates. I don't want to have, a trade in platitudes for a couple of weeks. That achieves nothing. That's a recipe for more infighting and division and further loss of public trust. Let's get on and actually deal with this now. All right, you mentioned public trust there. I think everyone really thinks our tax burden is too high. I think a lot of people think we're spending it in the wrong places as well, actually. I've read with interest something you published earlier, actually. It says, so you think we have a military that's too focused on virtue signalling and it needs to be focused on fighting? I mean, Labour keeps telling us that we're broke, this budget's going to be painful. So what kind of military do you want and how would you fund that? Well, I think we live in very dangerous times and we need to be investing more on our armed forces. So I want us to get up to at least 3% of GDP spent on our armed forces and use that to pay our troops more, so we can tackle the retention crisis we have in the armed forces, improve our navy, improve the weaponry and the modern technology like lethal drones that we have available to us, learning the lessons from conflicts like Ukraine. But because I'm a fiscal conservative, I don't want to see the state get bigger. I don't want to see taxes rise. As you say, they are too high already. So I would take money from our international aid budget and spend it on defence. I think that is the way that we can defend the interests of the British people and project power overseas, not by spending money on international aid, often in parts of the world that are richer than parts of our own country. That is not acting in the interest of the British people.
And some people say, well, the argument really for foreign aid is it's soft power, that we need to do that. We have certain commitments to certain parts of the world. Do you just not buy that?
I'm very sceptical about many of these economic development projects, often in parts of the world that are well off, like India. We shouldn't be spending money there. And most importantly, though, in difficult decisions, let's spend money on the actual direct interests of the British people, which is keeping us safe. And you can't have an armed forces which is depleted as ours, where we have ships, as reported this week, that haven't even got the crew for them to get out at sea. Let's fix these problems by investing in our armed forces, and let's use the money from our aid budget to do so.
And one of the things I wonder about is whether or not people are keen to fight for this version of Britain. And when you see things, certain things, like an article that's doing the rounds today, that supposedly they are thinking of imposing not Black History Month in schools, but having it like across the syllabus, as a mandated thing, across the syllabus, as a mandatory form of education. Now, nothing wrong entirely, of course, about learning about Black history or anything. But that tends to go hand in hand, I think, for sometimes about people who want to talk Britain down. So under your leadership, if you did become Prime Minister, would you do things like ban having mandated Black History Month lessons in schools, do you think?
Look, I don't think we should be denigrating our history and our culture. I think we are so lucky to live in this country, and we have been handed from our forebears unparalleled national identities: British, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, English, and we should be trying to hand those on to the next generation. I want my 3 young girls to be taught in school our history and our heritage, to celebrate it, not to denigrate it and demean it. And some of the things that are happening today in our schools are just wrong. We need to be weeding that out. Well, far too often our children are taught about the things that went wrong in our history. They're taught to think that we are in a uniquely bad country. That's not right. Of course, like any country, there are things that we did well and the things we did wrong in the past. But overall, Britain's contribution to the world has been a great positive, and we should be teaching our children that so that they can pass it on to their children as well.
Now, I couldn't let you get going without mentioning we've got decision time on Thursday, where you and Kemi Badenoch, you're going to be taking questions from Conservative members. I will just make it abundantly clear, for the avoidance of any doubt, we have approached Kemi's team. I believe one of her allies is going to be on tomorrow, so we'll have that interview then. But I wanted to ask, do you get a bit nervous ahead of these things? Your chances of becoming Tory leader hinge on how well it goes on this channel on Thursday night, do they?
Look, well, I haven't done a debate like this in the past, but I'm looking forward to it. I know that Chris Hope will compare it very impartially, and it'll be great to be here, to be taking questions. I would like there to be more of these debates, frankly. I think we're applying to a very, very important job. Leader of the opposition, prospective Prime Minister of our country, and the more scrutiny, the better. So my view is I will debate Kemi anywhere, anytime. And I'd like to see, in fact, a head-to-head debate as well, because the GBNews debate is great, but we are not going head-to-head. I think that the public deserve to see the two of us actually discussing and teasing out the clear policy differences between us. And if there's an opportunity to do that, for example, on the BBC, I know that they've proposed one for the 24th of October. I will certainly be there. Very much hope that Kemi will as well.
So she's not confirmed yet, as far as you're aware, then?
Not as far as I'm aware, but I certainly have, and you can only speak for yourself. I'll be there. I very much look forward to debating the issues.
Interesting stuff. Well, it's something I can put to one of Kemi's allies tomorrow. Maybe she has confirmed. We just don't know about it yet. But Thursday, it's going to be a big day. Look, thank you very much for coming in today. And,
thanks, Patrick. Yeah, have a good evening.
I'll be seeing you soon, no doubt, as well. So as I was saying there, it is decision time in the Tory leadership election. The race to lead heats up on Thursday, the 17th of October. It is Robert Jenrick versus Kemi Badenoch, live on GB News from 7 p.m.